I had just gotten a sliding bandsaw, so I was looking for something to cut up. My neighbor had just taken down some poplar and pear trees in his garden and dumped them at my place. I'm apparently the kind of guy that people dump their wood with. So if you ever find yourself needing to get rid of a forest or maybe just a few trees, remember, I'm your guy. Just be sure to give me a heads up before you start seeing my yard as your personal lumber dumping ground. These poplar guys are very wet. They still produce green leaves, so they are perfect for my little wetwood building experiment. This was the summer of 2021, and it is now 3 years later. I still have the benches are made from the wet poplar wood, so we can take a trip to the future later and see how they are doing. It's generally not recommended to use poplar for outdoor use because this wood is not naturally resistant to rot and insect attacks. So, of course, that is exactly what I plan to do. The plan is to make a lot of log benches to have around our garden and the house, and to try out my new tenon cutter. I really appreciate that you have been sticking with me for this long in the video, and I feel we should get to know each other a little better. I live in Denmark, and if you could just type in the comments down below where you're from, I'll be happy to say hi to you. I have a friend, an American, who moved to Denmark and started to learn Danish. He told me we have a very unique word in Denmark that became one of his favorite words, and I think it's a word that we will have some good use of knowing going forward in this video. There isn't really an English word or sentence that means the same, but the best way to describe this word might be a combination of never mind, let it go, or it is what it is. So the Danish word for all of this is pyt. Yeah. Just pyt. So the next time you're stuck in traffic and late for a meeting, or your woodworking project goes completely bonkers, or your SD card crashes with 1 week of footage on it, remember, shake your shoulders a bit and say pyt. Pyt. I will need to use this word a few times in the upcoming builds, so I thought I would just bring you up to speed with a little insight into Danish culture and language. You're welcome. This is one of the first times I have used this sliding bandsaw or sawmill, and I'm pretty excited about it, but bear with me if I'm looking a bit inexperienced. I can already imagine what the comments are going to look like, and yes, most people do not have a horizontal bandsaw in their shed. There are many ways to mill lumber for log furniture, and before I had this saw, I used my chainsaw to mill lumber. I've been working and saving really hard to be able to get this saw, and this small model is really not that expensive. But if you have access to logs, it's a really brilliant way to be able to turn logs into usable lumber for your wood projects, and a ton of other uses. I'll show you some crazy uses a little later. This log is no problem for the saw, and I aim to get 3 big slabs out of it. And I plan to make 5 log benches, 1 really long and 4 shorter ones. So I must cut 2 slabs in half. And after debarking the slabs, I start on the joinery. Joinery on log furniture is pretty simple. It is more or less just drilling holes to hammer the legs into. So I pull out my 2-inch Japanese auger drill bit and start drilling some holes. I really like to work with auger drill bits like this one. 2-inch bits like this are not easy to find, but I am super impressed with the sharpness and precision. It drills perfect holes into these poplar logs, and even my little cheap Einhell drill seems to be able to turn it around. And a little later in the video, I will try to use this auger bit to drill down a standing hardwood tree. For the legs, I'm just grabbing some branches and I'm using a 2-inch tenon cutter to cut the tenons on the legs. The primary function of a tenon cutter is to shape the end of a piece of wood into a tenon, which will then fit snugly into the corresponding mortise, aka the hole I just made with the drill. Imagine you are all geared up for a long session of tenon cutting. I know I was. But the drill you have is a budget-friendly, slightly underwhelming Einhell drill. And apparently, cutting tenons is quite a hard job for this little fellow. After 4 tenons, that is just one bench, Einhell started to smoke. It wasn't just being dramatic, it literally died half through the 4th tenon. And I guess I'll just have to say pyt and move on. I got through the rest of the tenons with a combination of all my other drills, some of them ported. I also ordered the most powerful drill I could find, a Makita 40-volt brushless powerhouse that I will test a little later. If you have seen any of my videos, you know that my favorite way of treating wood for the outdoors is by burning it. Bugs, fungus, moisture hate the charred burnt wood. Burnt wood is even more resistant to catching fire. What? And it's a natural and safe way to treat wood, unless you burn it down, of course. And it will last for a long time, if you don't burn it down. I treat the bottom of the legs with linseed oil to make them more resistant to rot and moisture. I'm burning the top of the bench until it's black, and then I brush it gently with some sandpaper. And then I pre-treat it with some linseed oil. After the oil has soaked in, I gently heat up some of my beeswax mixture. I have a video on my channel if you want to see how I mix it. This has made the surface of the bench completely water resistant for many years. And I've used beeswax on all my outdoor tables, benches and chairs. It will be interesting to see if this works on fresh wood and how it will develop over the next few years. The benches have been left outside for the last 3 years, and I'll just go and grab some footage of them and show you a little later in the video. The only thing left now is inviting family and friends to celebrate Midsummer in Denmark around the bonfire. This was a very special midsummer for me because it was one of the last times my dad was able to visit me, and he was very impressed with my use of poplar. he got sick and died a few years later. I miss you, Dad. I know he would have loved the cabin build that I'm now doing with my daughter.